So does an average doctor, given, inflation and all that, are these doctors that are working for these groups, are they making more or less than maybe they would have been? Huh?
It depends. Depends on what your specialty is. Physicians, by and large, for years and years, have been relatively well compensated. That's changing a lot. You've got many of the pressures financially for docs are increasing, whether it's compliance with the regulatory scheme that's here, either at the federal level or the state level, whether it's the cost of just being in practice, the cost of complying with different sorts of things. So it's changing. It's one of the reasons that many physicians now say, I want to take care of people. That's my passion, is to care for people. But I don't want to have to make all these other decisions. I don't want to have to decide, who the office manager is going to be, who's going to be running the X-ray machine, who's going to be working in the surgery center, who's going to, all those things. I don't want to have to decide. Just let me please just take care of
Why
patients.
is that? Why such a change from when you started?
Part of it is cultural, I suspect, but it's gotten much more difficult not just in medicine but across the board to try to have a practice, try to run a practice. It's so complicated now with the requirements and the complexities of the system itself. It's actually one of the things that drove me into the political arena. Is because I felt that at some point I recognized, when I worked here in the North Atlanta area, and I had an office that I started. I was in solo practice for 6 years and then grew it into a large orthopedic practice. And I remember in the early to mid 90s, I remember the day when I was walking from my office. I got the call from the nurse that there was a patient I was supposed to see. I was walking from my office where I do my clerical stuff, toward the clinical area, toward the front office where the patients were. And I remember that coming to that door where I would move through that door into the clinical area where you see patients and take care of them. And I remember thinking, oh my goodness, there are more people on this side of the door, the non-clinical side of the door, than there were on the clinical side of the door, because there were all the folks back there who were trying to deal with the insurance companies, with the hospitals, with the labs, trying to make certain that everything was being done. And I remember thinking, that doesn't make a whole lot of sense, that there are more people who are in the practice of medicine, helping this practice of medicine, who never see a patient.
There's more government involvement, like
more,
a lot
more
of
involvement,
stuff.
more insurance requirements and the like. So I remember thinking, boy, oh boy, when I got the opportunity to run for the state senate here in North Fulton, I remember thinking, maybe I can do more to help patients, the practice of medicine and patients, as a legislator than and help more people than I could as a physician, because I loved practicing medicine. Oh my goodness gracious, what a
satisfying.
What an incredible honor it was, and to be able to truly help people. And as an orthopedic surgeon, which I think is the best specialty for sure, because you by and large you're taking care of healthy people who have some calamity befall them. Either they break a bone, or they have some trauma or something. And if and when you do the right thing, most folks get well and get back to what they're doing. Not everybody, and some people have some awful diseases that we had to take care of, and try to help folks through that. But by and large, if you did the right thing,
had a happy ending, so to speak.
Happy ending, and that was incredibly gratifying. I still get folks come up to me in the post office and the grocery store and the like, who say, thank you.
You fixed this.
You fixed this. You took care of my son. You took care of my daughter.
And that's really what it's all about.
It is. It really is. I mean, there's nothing more gratifying and more satisfying and more fulfilling than caring for somebody and helping them.
So let's talk about that healthcare thing. I mean, everybody's got a different view of what the problem is. What is there, in your opinion, what needs to happen? I mean, do we need this universal type health care? Do we need more private? I mean, you've spent a lot of time on that. So
I have. You got, how much time you got?
I got all day. give me the quarter's worth,
President Eisenhower, when
we're going way back now.
We're going way back. All the hats that he wore, right?
Right.
And, you know, he was, and he used to say whenever he had a problem that he couldn't solve, he made the problem bigger, and the solution tended to come into focus if you make the problem so big. And so I used to think about that as it related to medicine, and people get down in the weeds on healthcare all the time, and that's
everybody's got a piece of the pie, right?
Everybody's got a piece of the pie. But I believe that if you make the problem bigger, if you try to figure out what the fundamental solution is, what's the fundamental fix to healthcare, I think it becomes pretty doggone simple. So you mentioned universal healthcare. Do we need universal healthcare? Well, I mean, that connotes a lot of things. Do we need everybody to be covered? To have some type of insurance coverage? You bet. The system doesn't work anymore when you've got all sorts of people out here, many people out here walking around without any coverage. It just doesn't work. When my dad and my granddad practiced medicine, I remember my grandfather getting paid in cords of wood and chickens.
You just got it any way you could, right?
And
you were going to help them regardless.
Exactly. But the people wanted to compensate their physician for taking care of them, and sometimes they had the money, sometimes they didn't, and when they didn't have the money, then they came up with something that what they thought was valuable enough to be able to give.
Right.
That's you can't do that anymore. It's illegal to do that. So you can't have folks out here walking around without any insurance. So when you make the problem big enough, you got to get everybody covered. Now the question is, how do you get everybody covered? And that's where part of the rub comes. But I think there's a relatively simple way to do it. You have a whole system of like we do, different insurance policies that people have available to them. For those folks that can't afford it, then we make certain that they have something available to them. Our Medicaid system is one of the things that's right now. And you just make it so that everybody is able to have access to that coverage. So that's one principle. Second is, regardless of who's paying the bill for that coverage, the patient needs to own the coverage. They need to be the ones that own the policy. So they're the ones that select the policy. It's not somebody else picking the policy.
Yeah.
And the reason that that's important, that's incredibly important, is that if your doctor wants you to have a test or something and the insurance company says no right now, you know, you don't need that, or it's too soon. And your doctor's hands are tied. He or she really can't do anything because the insurance company says no. Well, that's not the doctor practicing medicine. That's the insurance company practicing medicine. So your doctor says to you, well, if you can get your insurance company to approve this, then we'll go ahead. And sometimes it's little stuff, a blood test. Sometimes it's big stuff. Sometimes it's major surgery that can help you. So you go home. You say, I got a bright idea. I'm going to go home. I'm going to call the insurance company and I'm going to tell them that my doctor says I need to have this done. They've already done that, by the way, and they've been turned down. But I'm going to do it myself because I'm the patient, right? I ought to be in charge of this. So they go home and call the insurance company. And what's the insurance company say, basically? No. Why don't you call somebody who cares? Because you don't pay the bill. You aren't the person that's responsible for picking us. It's either your employer or the human resources officer or the government, state government or federal government, is picking the insurance company.
You're not the customer.
You're not the customer. So you see how the relationship changes. If you own it, they have to be responsive to you because they know that the next time
you go to another company.
Go to another company. So if you get everybody covered and make certain that coverage is owned by the patient, I promise you, we turn this system on its head in a positive way, and it then becomes responsive to the patient, which is who it ought to be responsive
So do we have like a tier system then? So you got people at the bottom that aren't paying that are covered. I mean,
they would own their coverage.
An illegal immigrant gets hurt on a construction job and goes...
Different question.
Different? Okay.
That's a question about the legality of individuals being here. If you want to talk about
somebody who's legal and they don't have insurance.
Well, they would have insurance in my system.
They'd be covered under something.
That's
okay,
right.
I got you.
And they would own it.
Would they pay for it?
If they made a certain amount of money. Now, those are the decisions that the policymakers have to make.
Okay, so you got to figure it out. So some people might get it free. Some people pay a little, very little.
That's right.
Okay, and then you got maybe a then from there, is it kind of open to individuals to choose the types of policies that they want?
Absolutely.
So then we're kind of back to what we kind of had before a little bit, except the bottom people are being covered now.
I wouldn't call them the bottom people. I'd say everybody gets covered. Everybody gets covered. The model for this, part of the model for this, people say, well, don't other nations do this better than we do? Well, no, not really from a health care standpoint. But Switzerland has, I think, an ideal model for if you're of the belief that the government ought to be providing health coverage, and that is that the government of Switzerland doesn't run any health system. It doesn't run a Medicare program or a Medicaid program. It simply provides the resources through taxes, obviously, but provides the resources for each individual to pick the insurance coverage that they want. So they go, each citizen of Switzerland, they pick what they want. And then you've got that appropriate relationship.
So we could do kind of like we do with Section 8 housing or something like that. In other words, if you can't afford, based on your income, you can only afford X. So if your policy should be $500 a month, and based on your income, you're going to do $3, maybe some entity makes that difference up for you.
That's right.
Something like that. But yet still as an individual, you're choosing which company that you want.
Exactly right.
Okay, so what I don't understand